All right, thank you all for coming. It is time to go ahead and start, so we'll go ahead and get going just with our time restraint. I'd like to thank you all for coming, and this is the food labeling class. Also, just kind of give you some tidbits to kind of keep ahead of in the future. Be looking online constantly, at least each week, as far as what's being added, as far as classes or even physical activity opportunities. What we do have coming up, April 26th, is our beginners 5K. So this is not for those pro runners or, diligent runners that always do these 5Ks or marathons. This is for beginners only. They're not allowed. And this was opened up for our family. So if you want to bring, usually your family member is your support person. So if you want to go ahead and have them sign up as well. April 9th is the pre-registration deadline, and after that it will go up $5. And just a heads up as well, for family members, it will be an extra $5 anyway. So before registration, it would be pre-registration would be $15 for employee, $20 per family member, and then after that it would be just an additional $5 on each. So, but without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Alicia Teague. So, here you go.
I'm going to come down because I'm used to moving around. I can't stand still at one place. My name is Alicia Teague. I'm one of the dietitians here. If y'all see me in the hallways, or I've educated somebody in my diabetes class. But today's session is on reading food labels. Now, I know everybody's gone to the grocery store, looked on the back of a label at least once or twice. Am I right? Okay. What's the first thing? And some people, it varies. The first thing you may look for is some people may look for calories, or see how much fat, or see how much salt, or if you're diabetic, or even if you're not diabetic, see how many carbohydrates are in the back of that label. Okay, so we look at it all. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is kind of break it down to show what you need to look for and what things to watch out for and what all these percentages mean over here. Okay, and I gave you a handout. I guess everybody got one when they came in. And that's just a little tidbit about what those percentages mean and how to read a food label a little more clear. Okay. For those who are in the back, you can come up front if you want to. If not, I can holler out, okay, each one. And plus, you got your example on your sheet. The first thing you look for on the back of a label is the very first thing underneath the nutrition fact, and it says serving size, right? Because that's the very first thing you've got to look at. The only reason is because there can be more than one serving in the whole container. Because each of these numbers represent amount per one serving. Not the whole container, but per one serving. Okay? So that's the very first thing you need to look for when you look on the back of a label. Which means, say for instance, you're looking in a bag of potato chips, because I know we all ate some before. Okay? The serving size may be 20 chips, but there may be 10 servings in the whole bag. Okay? So the serving size is the very first thing you need to look for when you look on the back of any kind of label. Of course, the next thing, it has amount per serving, so all these numbers represent amount per serving. And like I said, the total calories is the very first thing you usually see underneath the amount per serving, underneath the serving size, of course. And then over here you see calories from fat. Okay, so what that usually means, of course, that's the calories that make up, of course, the fat that makes up the calories. Okay, what you want to try to do is try to find something. This number wants to be at least 30% or less of your total calories. Okay, so this calories from fat want to be at least 30% or less from the total calories. So as an example here, I don't know what you've had on your sheet, but this calorie says amount per serving 200 calories. Okay, and it says calories from fat 90. So that's almost 50%. Okay, of those calories come from fat. So it's about, I'll say 40, 45%. So that's something that you want to pay close attention to. So if something is 40 or 45 or above that 30%, that's something you may want to put back down or may want to eat, just one serving size of it, because a lot of those calories are coming from fat. Okay, and fat is something that's hard to get rid of. Even though, we lose weight, we exercise, what really happens is those fat cells, they're still there, they just shrink. Okay. So that's one of the things you really want to pay close attention to, is trying to find your calories from fat, something 30% or less from this total calories right here. This middle section, okay, it tells you, of course, the calories in one serving. It tells you the total fat, the cholesterol, the sodium, total carbohydrates. This is all the stuff we tend to look at. Sugar, and some people may look at protein if you're looking to get some protein in your diet. I'm going to simplify it for you by going right over to the right, and it says percent daily value. Okay, so what do those percentages mean? Okay, well, the breakdown is if something is 5% or less, that means it doesn't have very much of that product in it. Okay, so for example, this total fat is 10 grams, but you scroll all the way over and it says 15%. Okay, so we already know that it's probably got a pretty good amount of fat in it because it's more than 5%. Something that's 10% to 19% means it's got a pretty good amount of that product in it, okay, of that nutrient. If it's 20% or more, that means it's got quite a bit of that nutrient in there, okay? So if you go back to your label and you see the total fat again is 10 grams, and it said the percent daily value is 15%. So it's got a pretty good amount of fat in there because that's in that range of 10 to 19%. So really what you're looking for, especially if you're watching out for total fat or even sodium, you want to try to look for something that's 5% or less, okay, or 10% or less. Okay, when you get into that 10 to 19% and then 20% or more, that means it's got a pretty good amount of that nutrient in it. Another thing is, of course, some people may look at cholesterol. You notice this says only 20 milligrams, and the percent daily value is 7%. So that means it doesn't have very much cholesterol in that product. Okay, so it's just a little bit over 5%. You notice the total carbohydrates on this one is 24 grams, and that percent daily value is 8%. So it doesn't have too many carbs. But you notice the sodium is 360 milligrams. That's also something people look for is the amount of salt. Okay, it says 15%. So which means it's in that range of that 10 to 19%. So that means it's got a pretty good amount of sodium in there. Okay, when you're looking on the back of a label for total sodium, you want to try to look for something that's 300 milligrams or less. That means it's low in salt. But if you find something that's 140 milligrams or less, that means it's very low in salt. You really want to aim toward that goal, but if you do find something that's 300 milligrams or less, that's still doing okay. Because most of the times we buy anything that's packaged or canned or processed, it's going to have a lot of salt in it, okay, because it's a preservative. And salt is what holds it on the shelf for a little longer, okay? So what you want to look for your sodium is at least 300 milligrams or less or 140 milligrams or less. That means it's very low in salt. But the key thing is to look at these percentages over here to the right and make sure, especially if you're looking at total fat or sodium or total carbohydrates, then you want to try to have that number definitely less than 20%. Because anything that's 20% or more has a lot of that in there, especially those factors dealing with fat, carbohydrates, and your sodium. One other thing also I want to mention, everybody sometimes has on a kick of counting carbohydrates, okay? And you notice sugar is always listed on the back too, okay? So some people get confused of what should I look for? Should I look for total carbs? Should I look for the sugar amount? Well, the only number you really want to look for the total amount of sugar is the number beside the word total carbohydrate. And the reason is that sugar number is already added in the total carbohydrate number. Okay, so when you're looking for, as far as watching how much sugar should I have, or how much this is too much, or this is too less, and you notice in this food label that I've got, the total carbohydrate says 24 grams. But you notice the sugar says 10 grams. Okay, so it can be kind of deceiving, like, oh, this only got 10 grams of sugar. Okay, but in reality, it has 24 grams. Okay, so that sugar number is already added in the total carbohydrate number. So if you're looking for to see how much sugar, okay, that's in that product, you really only need to look for the number beside the word total carbohydrate. Okay? And you notice also like the percentage is 8%, so it didn't really have too much carbs in that. But just remember, when you're looking at the back of a label and you want to see how much sugar is in something, look at the number beside the total carbs and not at that sugar number. Okay? Another thing that people look for is fiber, because we stress fiber. Okay? Anything whole grain is good for you, okay? Because fiber keeps us full a little longer. We need a little bit of fiber in our diet. And most of the time, as Americans, we don't consume enough fiber. Okay? That's just it. We just don't consume enough. And you can get fiber from many different sources. Anything whole grain, your beans, your peas. Keep the peeling on the fruit if you can, on an apple or a peach, because that peeling contains fiber. So you can get it from many different sources. It's just that we just don't consume a lot of it. When you're looking for a high fiber food, you want to try to look for something that has at least 5 grams of fiber on the back of the label. Okay? If it has 5 grams of fiber, that means it's got a pretty good source of fiber in it. Anything that's 3 grams or more, okay, it's still a pretty good item of fiber. Most of your wheat bread or your 100% whole grain breads are going to have at least 3 grams of fiber. Okay? So, if it's 3 grams or more, it's good. But if it's 5 grams of fiber, it means it's got a pretty good source of fiber in it. Okay? Most of the time, your high fiber products, they'll list high fiber on the product, or they'll list 100% whole grain on the product. Okay? So they'll mention that it's a good fiber source. But if you're looking for something that has a high amount of fiber, make sure it has at least 5 grams of fiber. Another thing is when you scroll down, okay, I'm going to scroll down here. It says this is the table showing recommended daily intake, okay? And this is based on, if you notice, they always have this on the bag. This is based on 2,000 calories and 2,500 calorie diet. Of course, everybody's diet varies, okay? It's different because everybody's body structure is different, okay? So this is just a generalization on a 2,000 calorie and a 2,500 calorie diet. And it says total fat should be less than 65 grams. Really, that's correct. Total fat should be less than 65 grams within the day. Around 50 to 65 grams of fat is what's recommended throughout the day. You see the total cholesterol, we wanted to try to be less than 300 milligrams. Okay, most of the time we get our cholesterol, of course, from our high fatty foods and our luncheon meats that we consume a lot of. So we want to try to definitely cut back on that. And most of all, our fried foods, because we're the South. We love to fry. And we love our bacon. We love our butter. Okay, so we definitely want to try to bake, broil, or grill it most of the time. But for the cholesterol, you want to try to get something that's less than 300 milligrams. Okay. So when you look on the back of a label, you always want to look for the serving size. That is because there can be more than one serving in the whole container. When you're looking at the middle part of the label, you want to try to get something on the right-hand side. Know that if it's 5% or less, it means it has less amount of that nutrient in it. If it's 10 to 19%, it means it's got quite a bit. Okay? And 20% or more, it means it's got a pretty good amount. Okay? When you're looking at the calories from fat, you want to make sure that it's at least 30% or less than its total calories. As you can see, this is almost 50%. Okay? So the only reason is because you don't really want to get a lot of your calories from fat. Okay? And then also remember that when you're looking for the sugar on the back of a label, is that sugar is added in that total carbohydrate number. Okay, so the total carbohydrate number is the only number you really want to look for. I've got a few tidbits here because, when you're reading food label, it's always an advertisement game. Because you see sugar-free, fat-free, and you say, oh, this must be good. Okay, I can eat this whole box. Well, that's where the misconception gets in kind of a little bit, okay? So I want to give you a little tidbit about what actually calorie-free means, what actually sugar-free means, or fat-free means, okay? And when I read off these numbers, you're probably going to be astonished about, my goodness, that's not very many of these products after all, okay? If something is calorie-free, that means it has to be less than 5 calories per serving. Okay, now how many of you guys seen anything less than 5 calories per serving? I know I hadn't yet. I'm still searching, but I hadn't yet. If it's sugar-free, it has to be less than 0.5 grams of sugar per serving. Okay, and you know most of the time nothing's less than 0.5 grams. Okay, that's right. So if it's fat-free, okay, something that's fat-free, it has to be less than 0.5 grams of fat, okay? So look at this, of course, this is 10 grams of fat, but it has to be less than 0.5 grams of fat in order to be fat-free, okay? So basically, when you're adding your sugar and you're adding the fat, of course, you got to add all that stuff in because you got to give it a little taste. You got to have a little flavor to it, okay? So really, it's kind of like an advertisement game. So when somebody says something that's sugar-free or fat-free, and you know now sugar-free means less than 0.5 grams of sugar, it's not actually sugar-free. It may have less sugar in it, okay, but it still has some sugar, okay? Anything that's, for instance, that's low in saturated fat, because some people are thinking about saturated fat. Saturated fat is that hard fat like the butter and that hard fat that clogs your arteries. Okay, saturated fat, if it's 1 gram of saturated fat or less, something that's lean has less than 10 grams of fat, something that's extra lean, okay, has less than 5 grams of fat. If you're looking for something that's low in cholesterol, remember this total low cholesterol is less than 300 you want to try to stick to, but if it's very low in cholesterol, it means it has 20 milligrams or fewer. Okay, that means it's very low in cholesterol. And like I said before, for your sodium, in order to be very low in sodium, it has to be 140 milligrams or less. Okay, that means it's very low in sodium. Okay, and like I also said before, for something that's going to be a good fiber source, it has to have at least 5 grams of fiber. Okay, so the next time you're in the grocery store, okay, and you're looking on the back of a label, you look for the serving size, okay? You look for your calories, of course, and remember that all these numbers represent amount per 1 serving. You want to try to find something 30% or less the calories from fat. These percentages numbers, and you got your handout as a reference, something that's 5% or less, meaning it doesn't have very much of that in there. 10 or 19 is a pretty good amount. 20% is quite a bit. Your total salt, you want to try to look for something 140 milligrams or less. Your sugar is added in your total carbs. You want to make sure you remember that. Okay. And then the biggest thing is making sure you know that the servings per container is also listed underneath the serving size. So as an example, this serving size says 1/2 cup. The servings per container says 4. So all of these numbers are by 4. Okay, so really, if you ate this whole product, okay, we'll say it's a can of peaches, okay, and the serving size is 1/2 cup, okay. If you had the whole can, which is 4 servings of the whole can, this 10 grams goes to 40. Okay, this sodium, it started at 360. Okay, so that's quadruple that, which would be almost 1,200, 1,300 milligrams of sodium. Okay, see how that adds up depending on how much you eat of it too? Because as dietitians, you know, we always stress moderation, moderation. I know you've heard it, moderation. Okay, well, that's true. Because you can have your favorite thing, no matter what it is, okay? You can have that, you know, peaches or, you know, slice of cake or slither, okay? But you always got to watch out how much of it, okay? So always remember your serving size and then the whole container. You have to add up depending on what the serving size is, okay? And make sure that you add all the numbers, okay? Do I got any kind of, go ahead, question. Okay. That's right, 360. That's absolutely correct. That's right. That's right. Adds up pretty fast depending on what it is. Okay. Yes.
I've seen labels in the store that say by total fat, it'll have two different, it'll have like 3 grams, and then next one it'll have 2 grams. Do you know what that?
I'm assuming it doesn't have the saturated fat underneath there. It just has the, oh, okay.
Like right next to each other?
Yes. What that is that some labels break it down, like on one side is the amount per one serving, and on the second column is the total amount in the whole container. Okay, and some food labels, not all of them, are breaking them down that way. So on the first column is the amount per the one serving, which would be these numbers. Okay, and then the second column would be like the 40 grams on the right-hand side. Okay, so it's giving you the amount per one serving on the left column. On the right column, it gives you the whole amount in the whole container. Yeah. Any other questions? Comments? Analysis? Okay. Thank you for coming, and I hope that next time you go inside or the grocery store, Walmart, Kroger's, wherever you may go, you'll look on the back of a label and know what you're looking at. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, no, everybody join in. Thank you, Alicia. I appreciate you coming today, and thank you all for coming. As far as getting your class credit in, if you do have questions or any concerns, please feel free to contact me. My name again is Tiffany Forbes, and I know you could probably find me on the email or my number somewhere. So anyway, thank you all.